If you think you're hearing the word empathy everywhere, you're right. It's now on the lips of scientists and business leaders, education experts and political activists. But there is a vital question that few people ask: how can I expand my own empathic potential? Empathy is not just a way to extend the boundaries of your moral universe. According to new research, it's a habit we can cultivate to improve the quality of our own lives. But what is empathy? It's the ability to step into the shoes of another person, aiming to understand their feelings and perspectives, and to use that understanding to guide our actions. What makes it different from kindness or pity? And don't confuse it with the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. As George Bernard Shaw pointed out, do not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They might have different tastes. Empathy is about discovering those tastes. The big buzz about empathy stems from a revolutionary shift in the science of how we understand human nature. The old view that we are essentially self-interested creatures is being nudged firmly to one side by evidence that we are also Homo empathicus, wired for empathy, social cooperation, and mutual aid. Over the last decade, neuroscientists have identified a 10-section empathy circuit in our brains which, if damaged, can curtail our ability to understand what other people are feeling. Evolutionary biologists like Franz de Waal have shown that we are social animals who have naturally evolved to care for each other, just like our primate cousins. And psychologists have revealed that we are primed for empathy by strong attachment relationships in the first 2 years of life, but empathy doesn't stop developing in childhood. We can nurture its growth throughout our lives, and we can use it as a radical force for social transformation. Research in sociology, psychology, history, and my own studies of empathic personalities over the past 10 years, reveals how we can make empathy and attitude a part of our daily lives, and thus improve the lives of everyone around us. Here are the 6 habits of highly empathic people. Habit 1. Cultivate curiosity about strangers. Highly empathic people, HEPs, have an insatiable curiosity about strangers. They will talk to the person sitting next to them on the bus, having retained that natural inquisitiveness we all had as children, but which society is so good at beating out of us. They find other people more interesting than themselves but are not out to interrogate them, respecting the advice of the oral historian Studs Terkel: don't be an examiner, be the interested inquirer. Curiosity expands our empathy when we talk to people outside our usual social circle, encountering lives and worldviews very different from our own. Curiosity is good for us too. Happiness guru Martin Seligman identifies it as a key character strength that can enhance life satisfaction. And it is a useful cure for the chronic loneliness afflicting around 1 in 3 Americans. Cultivating curiosity requires more than having a brief chat about the weather. Crucially, it tries to understand the world inside the head of the other person. We are confronted by strangers every day, like the heavily tattooed woman who delivers your mail or the new employee who always eats his lunch alone. Set yourself the challenge of having a conversation with one stranger every week. All it requires is courage. Habit 2. Challenge prejudices and discover commonalities. We all have assumptions about others and use collective labels, e.g., Muslim fundamentalist, welfare mom, that prevent us from appreciating their individuality. HEPs challenge their own preconceptions and prejudices by searching for what they share with people rather than what divides them. An episode from the history of U.S. race relations illustrates how this can happen. Claiborne Paul Ellis was born into a poor white family in Durham, North Carolina, in 1927. Finding it hard to make ends meet working in a garage and believing African Americans were the cause of all his troubles, he followed his father's footsteps and joined the Ku Klux Klan, eventually rising to the top position of exalted cyclops of his local KKK branch. In 1971 he was invited, as a prominent local citizen, to a 10-day community meeting to tackle racial tensions in schools, and was chosen to head a steering committee with Ann Atwater, a black activist he despised. But working with her exploded his prejudices about African Americans. He saw that she shared the same problems of poverty as his own. I was beginning to look at a black person, shake hands with him, and see him as a human being, he recalled of his experience on the committee. It was almost like being born again. On the final night of the meeting, he stood in front of 1,000 people and tore up his Klan membership card. Ellis later became a labor organizer for a union whose membership was 70% African American. He and Ann remained friends for the rest of their lives. There may be no better example of the power of empathy to overcome hatred and change our minds. Habit 3. Try another person's life. So you think ice climbing and hang gliding are extreme sports? Then you need to try experiential empathy, the most challenging, and potentially rewarding, for them all. Helps expand their empathy by gaining direct experience of other people's lives, putting into practice the Native American proverb, walk a mile in another man's moccasins before you criticize him. George Orwell is an inspiring model. After several years as a colonial police officer in British Burma in the 1920s, Orwell returned to Britain determined to discover what life was like for those living on the social margins. I wanted to submerge myself, to get right down among the oppressed, he wrote. So he dressed up as a tramp with shabby shoes and coat, and lived